everything around me. Green, get the money, dollar bill, yo.
What's up, guys? Got some more Crowfall action for you today. In this video, I'm going to be going over my Blackguard Assassin build. Now, the Assassin has been reworked quite a bit with the new patch. All three specs are quite a bit different from how they used to be. Some of them function completely differently. I think they did a really good job with the Assassin. I'm really liking all three of the different specs. They're all pretty unique, all pretty fun. With that being said, though, the Assassin is still a very uncommon class. You do not see that many Assassins in Crowfall actually doing very well. Part of that is because the margin for error is very slim. If you mess up even a little bit on the Assassin, you're probably going to die. And in order to have success with this class, you typically need to know how almost all the other classes work as well due to those low margins for error. So I don't recommend this class for a brand new player. You can try it. I'm sure some people will get away with it. It's just a harder road than if you were to pick up the game on a different class and kind of learn the ropes on that. So that's kind of my PSA warning for the Assassin in general, is that it's not super new player friendly. However, I do like what they did with all three of the specs. The Blackguard Assassin is the tankier assassin. It wears mail armor, as you can see, and it specializes on barriers. You can put a lot of barriers on yourself and have very good barrier uptime. It's very weird to play. It is super, super weird. I've played almost every class in this game fairly extensively, and there's not really one like the Blackguard where it's all about barrier maintenance, to the point to where I look at my own HP bar more than I look at my enemy's HP bar. And you gotta have a lot of discipline to play this spec. Whereas most specs, you kind of you use your cooldowns on cooldown. With this, if you use your cooldown too early, you will screw yourself. Too late, you will screw yourself. So you gotta be a little vigilant on that, which I'll get into later in the video. So let's start off with the race. So the really cool thing I like about the Blackguard, right now I'm half elf. I think half elf, for what I do and for what I like, is the best race for me. However, with that being said, I have a lot of different ideas for different races, and the different races actually change the way the builds play. I think all of the races are actually viable for the Blackguard, and I think all the races are probably viable for all the Assassin specs. With the way they did the domains and the disciplines, there's a lot of really good races. So if you are really attached to a certain race, or you really need that Fairy Fire, or really like that Glide on the Fae, or whatever it is, right? If you really like something, you can probably work around not being a half-elf. This is absolutely not mandatory, but I'm going to tell you why I like half-elf, particularly for the Blackguard. So, first of all, the base stats. Half-elf gets a lot of base stats. Now, these base stats, Crowfall is very different than other MMOs. 60 dexterity, you'd think going from 133 dexterity to 193. In most MMOs, that'd be crazy. That'd be a huge bump in DPS, but the way stats work in Crowfall is they're actually not that powerful. 60 extra dexterity, going from 120 to 180 dexterity, it's really not going to improve your damage. Hardly at all, really, as crazy as that sounds. It's a lot less than people think. However, it still matters. 60 dex, 30 int, 30 spirit, it's still not bad. It's not bad for something that's basically for free. So that's one thing. Another thing that's pretty great, this is probably the best thing about half-elf, is Wildkin's Retort. So the Blackguard is very much a brawler. You are in a fight. The fights have a pretty significant duration. I mean, it's not like a slog of a fight. It's not like you're playing a pit fighter or something where the fights just take forever. But some of your engagements are pretty long, and getting healed every time you get hit by the majority of CC is pretty significant. And this healing does add up, and it's free healing. It's not tied to a global cooldown. It's not tied to an animation. You get hit with this, you get the buff, right? It's very much free healing, and you get a lot of value out of this, especially with a Blackguard. Now, if I was a Cutthroat, it'd be a very different story. Cutthroat is very much in and out. If you're getting hit by the CC, if you're getting hit by CC as a Cutthroat, Wildkin's Retort is not going to save you. So this is one of those things that you do get more value out of it the longer and the more slow-paced your time to kill is. Next up, another thing that's great is Bandit's Armor. So I actually stack Constitution with this build. That's why I have 128 Con. I actually put all my points into Constitution for the barrier bonus. So that's going to help you out a little bit on Bandit's Armor. This ability, it's just nice. Yeah, you got a bunch of barriers as Blackguard. You got another barrier here. It's just kind of nice. So yeah. And also, Another thing not to forget is you have an extra miner as a half elf, so that's something else. Not huge, but also not too bad. I mean, the half elf is the half elf is pretty solid in terms of just getting lots of raw stats and raw power. You just get a lot of it with half elf. But with that being said, absolutely not a mandatory race. In fact, I've got a few. I don't want to go over it in this video because it would make this video too long, but I've got Nathari builds, I've got high elf builds, I've got Fey builds, and they're all, at least in my head, pretty sick. However, this one is one that I've tried quite a bit. I've had success with it, so this is what we're going to go with for now. All right, now let's get into the major disciplines. So the first major discipline I'm going to talk about is Knife Grinder, and this one is really hard to not take as a Blackguard because it is just so good. And what this is going to do is it's going to add a bleed to your third basic attack. So your third, your LMB 1, LMB 2, LMB 3, as the assassin, that is, I believe, the fastest LMB in the game. So you are constantly reapplying a bleed. That LMB is not tied to any sort of resource, so you're constantly spamming it out. Your LMB is your bread and butter, and the fact that it's constantly reapplying a bleed is very significant for many, many reasons, and we'll go over that. So the bleed on your LMB is super solid. Shrapnel is going to spread your bleeds around. If there's multiple targets, it's going to spread that around. Now, that's really not that great in most situations, but ironically, this build is actually amazing for PvE. I theory crafted this build as a PvP ganking type build, but it's actually the best, one of the best PvE grinding builds in the game. And Shrapnel really helps with that, so that's a nice little bonus. Didn't make the build for that, but hey, it's nice. And occasionally you are going to get some value out of Shrapnel in PvP, where you got multiple targets or whatever. And the Blackguard actually is a class. Unlike the Cutthroat, I would take a Blackguard into a small group skirmish, right? If it's like a 5v5 field fight. On a Blackguard, I'm actually confident going in there and playing in that and getting down and dirty because the Blackguard is actually capable of surviving that and actually potentially thriving in that kind of environment. So that ability, that Shrapnel passive is not as bad as it may seem. But the main thing is Long Live the Fighter. We're going to talk about why that's so good. So first of all, let's talk about your bleeds you have access to as an assassin. All the bleeds in the game are now the same. There's only one type of bleed. If the target is bleeding, they are bleeding. You can't have 2 bleeds on, 3 bleeds on. There's no severe bleed anymore. There's no minor bleed. Bleed is bleed is bleed. So Long Live the Fighter bleed is the same as the Garrote bleed, is the same as the Kidney Shot bleed. So if you spec Blackguard, your Kidney Shot will apply a bleed. That's pretty nice. That's still not terrible. It's not like, oh man, what a waste, right? Because when you open up out of stealth, you open up with your backstab and then you Kidney Shot and you instantly have a bleed up while you do your, while you do your shiv and all your other stuff you're trying to get up as well, right? So it's not bad that your Kidney Shot will apply a bleed, but it's not consistent. Ultimates in this game remove bleeds. Rangers have things that remove bleeds. There's lots of things in the game that remove dots. Garrote is another dot. It's another bleed, right? But it's tied to a spender, and it's got a 24-second cooldown, and again, it's not as consistent as your LMB just constantly reapplying the bleed. Now, why is that so important? Why do I keep saying it's so important for that bleed? That comes down to Dagger Storm. So your Dagger Storm will actually apply a toxin debuff. Now, this is a debuff. This is not instant toxin. This is not tied to Shiv at all. Shiv and those poisons are something completely different. So don't think about that at all. This is actually a debuff that gets put on the target. So if you look at Dagger Storm here, anytime you Dagger Storm a bleeding target, it will add a poison dot. It has nothing to do with Shiv or those instant toxins. Instant toxin is instant damage that hits no matter what. This is a toxin dot that will get applied when you Dagger Storm, which you're going to be constantly doing, but only if they're bleeding. So them consistently bleeding is very, very important. You need to have those bleeds up consistently, which is why Knife Grinder is so damn good. It's because if the fight's gone a decent amount of time, there's a good chance you have a bleed on them just through having Knife Grinder, and there's a very good chance that your Dagger Storm is going to apply another dot, which is pretty significant damage. So that's why Knife Grinder is so good. Tub Thumper, this discipline is certainly not mandatory, but I think it's just a great value. Blackguard is a class, is a spec that you're going to be in a fight for a while. It's not like Cutthroat where the fights are super, super fast. It's either, Cutthroat's either like you kill him really fast or you run away. Blackguard, you're in there, you're down there throwing some punches, so you're actually going to get quite a bit of value with Spite, which every time you're CC'd, you get a very significant heal. And why this is so good is because, again, it's free. Just like Wildkin's Retort, it's free healing. It's not tied to global cooldowns, not tied to ability usage. You don't have to have uptime to benefit from this thing. There are many things in the game that heal you or that sound really good, but they rely on uptime or you have to be spending animation time, right? But these are free. Like, this is just free healing, really easy to get value out of. And as a Blackguard in particular, you do get a lot of value out of Tub Thumper. So that's why I like that. It kind of synergizes nicely with Wildkin's Retort. Sometimes it's overkill, to be honest. There are some times where you get hit by like a garbage CC and you heal way too much. You're like, oh, I kind of wish I had XYZ more aggressive discipline. But largely, it's a pretty good value. So not going to go over the minors too much. I'm just going to show you what I use. Careless Whisper, I mean, it's just good. Underdog, you get AP when you're stunned or knocked down. Again, longer fights, you're going to get a lot of value out of Underdog just because you are fighting things for decent amounts. Sometimes this thing stacks up like 2 or 3 times. Like, that's not uncommon at all to see that. So Underdog is super good. Critical Dodge, if I remember right, Critical Dodge is one I just sort of threw in there because it seemed pretty good. You get an extra dodge pip pretty much randomly. So, yeah, I like that. Also, it's got Critical Strike on it as the main stat, so can't go wrong with that. And Sparring is just good. I mean, minors, these are fairly, they're just good. You can't really go wrong with those minors. Oh yeah, I didn't talk about Tub Thumper. Escapeology, it's all right. You're going to get some good value out of that. It's not as good as it sounds, but you get out of CC a little quicker, and sometimes the CC that might hit you is a little shorter, so it's not bad, but the main thing is definitely the Spite on that. So let's get into the talents. So these are the talents I run, and there are many choices here. This is certainly not mandatory. There are certainly some things that I like, particularly Poison Mastery. I really like Poison Mastery, but there are some people that hate it, like hate it with a passion, hate it. So I do not think that Efficient Poisons and mainly Poison Mastery, which you have to get Efficient Poisons for, these are certainly not mandatory. But yeah, there's a lot of freedom here. Some people, they like these talents, Yaga's Gift. Personally, I'm not a big fan of that. The one thing I think you absolutely need to get, and some people don't like running it because it's just another ability they got to hit, but Shiv, I think Shiv is way too good not to get the instant poison damage. You got to get that, in my opinion. I don't think you absolutely need to have Dirty Tricks. Like, if you don't want to get Dirty Tricks and you want to get to your whatever, if you want to get Schadenfreude instead or whatever, I just think Dirty Tricks, I just think it's good. It's another CC on a gank type class. It's another thing that'll potentially put them over the edge. But if you do have some sort of weird stun build, or you really want Yaga's Gift or whatever, I don't think it's terrible to not pick up these two. The one thing I will say about Poison Mastery is that the Black Mantle that this will give you is the best Black Mantle in the game. The Black Mantle Toxin allows you to put a Black Mantle poison on your weapon and constantly reapply a 500 healing debuff over and over and over again. So potentially, in theory, every single LMB would apply a 200 or a 500 heal block. So that is super significant. And that's why I picked that mainly, is because it against healers, man, that Black Mantle can be absolutely destructive. And if you do get into any sort of team fights that are a little scrappy and you dagger storm a bunch of people and you hit them all with that, it's not bad. And I really don't particularly think Schadenfreude or these other things are that great. Some things that other people do, like they might not pick up Dirty Tricks and they might pick up the stat bundle here instead, the extra 450 health, extra 150 AP. Personally, I think, again, to reference back to the stats, I think that 150 AP, while it sounds sexy, and that's taking your AP from 220 to whatever 370, that sounds great, right? Like, oh man, that's like 30% more AP, right? Yes, AP, like the stats just they really aren't that good. Whereas this blind, it can change the entire matchup like completely. So that's that. Now to talk about a talent that I really think is not good, that sounds good, and that would be Resourceful Tactics. I do not think so. This sounds great, right? grants an additional pip to the assassin whenever you do your third LMB or your blink step. So every time you do the 1, 2, 3, that third LMB will apply another pip. So you're doubling up on that. That sounds amazing until you realize that the Blackguard really doesn't have a big spender. Now, if you are playing like a diffusion build or some sort of weird build that does have a lot of spenders where you are constantly going through those pips, maybe that's good. But for my build, this really isn't going to help you much at all, honestly. So, these talents, you do have some choice here. That's the main thing. But definitely pick up Shiv. Definitely pick up Disengage. Like, you got to get that. Like, you got to get these two. You're doing it wrong if you don't get these two. And other than that, I mean, you definitely want to pick up Dagger Storm too, but that's kind of like duh, because Dagger Storm's going to apply that barrier. So you definitely want to do that. Now, I think that's it on the talents. Let's go over the powers. So I'm going to go over my power bar real quick and just sort of talk about briefly how I use each ability. So Kidney Shot, number 1. The big thing with Kidney Shot is do not be afraid of 1-point kidney shots. A lot of people will see this ability and go, well, I want to use this at 5 pips because it stuns for 6.25 seconds at 5 pips. Why would I use it at 1 when I can double the duration at 5? Here's the thing. A lot of the times when you kidney shot, it's going to be at the very start of a fight, and the target you are kidney shotting is going to have high stamina. And that means they're going to instantly retaliate the thing no matter what, whether it's 1 point or 5 points. So, in my opinion, most of the time, a 1-point kidney shot is actually superior to a 5-point kidney shot. Now, if it is later in the fight, sure, go for the 5-point kidney shot. Hit him with that big stun. It's dope. But just do not be afraid of the 1-point kidney shot. It's solid. Number 2, Backstab. Use this on cooldown if you do not have the backstab barrier up. We'll get into the more advanced usage of this power. You can't spam it. We'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, you are going to be using it frequently, and do not be afraid to front stab somebody with backstab for the barrier. In the Zone. In the Zone is an ability that you want to use at 5 combo points. Don't try and like micromanage this one and like do it every 1 pip or whatever. The thing with In the Zone is that it's an animation, it's a global cooldown, and in my opinion, you're better off just waiting until you inevitably have 5 pips and just wait till you have 5 pips to use this one, because you don't want to spend a bunch of animation time reapplying it at 1 to 2 pips. Like, it's just not worth it. It's not. So what this ability does, to explain what this ability does, because the power description does not actually tell you what it does. Power efficiency as an assassin, what that does for you is it will lower your cooldowns and increase your LMB damage. It'll make your backstab probably 2 seconds shorter of a cooldown, and it'll make a lot of your stuff about a 2-second less cooldown and increase your LMB damage. That is what power efficiency does. It's worth getting up, but it's not like super critical. Just get it up kind of whenever you can. That's the best way I'd say to use this ability. Dagger Storm. This is a critical ability for the Blackguard. Absolutely critical. Do not use this ability and spam it. It is not worth spamming. Use the first part of the combo and then stop. Outside of some weird AoE situation where there's like a bunch of people around you, just use it once. Use it for the barrier, and that's it. That is the only way I use this ability in the vast majority of situations. I do not spam it. It's not worth spamming. It doesn't do that much damage. And you want to be, you just want to get that barrier out, that 816 barrier, which is a lot. 816 for a barrier is a ton of barrier, but keep in mind I am con stacking, so that's not going to be quite as high for you non-constitution stackers. But yeah, this ability, use it, don't spam it, and you got to be disciplined with how you use it, which we'll get into in a minute. Shiv, use this bad boy on cooldown. Absolutely use Shiv on cooldown. Get that instant toxin up. Keep that instant toxin up all the time. And if you are taking the advanced toxins or the toxin mastery, use your best judgment. If you're fighting a cleric, get the black mantle up. If you're not, get the snare up. Use both. There's no point in not using both. This ability is worth using. It does 135 damage, so it's better than your LMBs. So just hit for example 5. 5 is my shiv key. Hit 5, then hit 5e. Always use it no matter what. Even if Black Mantle doesn't make sense for the situation, It's better than an LMB, so just YOLO that thing out. Dirty tricks, honestly, you can make some big plays with an extra CC, but a lot of the times when I use dirty tricks, I kind of just throw it out there. If I have used kidney shot and the guy is able to be CC'd, there's a good chance I'll just dirty tricks. So I YOLO this CC out there all the time. So don't be afraid to just kind of, throw it out there. You've got, your Q power also functions as a CC that blinds. So I guess my biggest advice for this ability is don't hang on to it. Don't pull like a Skyrim where you don't use any of your potions or any of your items because you're saving them for later and then you never actually use them. Just use this thing. Get it on cooldown. Don't worry about it. You got to use your cooldowns to actually get value from your cooldowns. As dumb as that sounds, just don't hang on to it forever. Disengage and blink step. Disengage is bread and butter for the assassin. All 3 assassin specs, you better get good with this one. You got to put in some time with this one to do the 180 disengage. It is absolutely critical to get that skill down where, if I want to go through that doorway, right, you got to do a quick 180. I messed it up right there, of course, but you got to get that muscle memory down. So yeah. You're going to have to put some time in for that one to get that down, and you'll see a lot of clips where I use the disengage very, use it aggressively to get into a situation. And blink step is obviously your shadow step here, which is a new power with this patch that just teleports you 30 meters to your target, assuming it's, nice terrain that interacts with this ability nicely. It's fairly consistent. It's not super inconsistent. It's not like chain pull inconsistent, which I don't know if they fixed that or not, but using these two abilities and getting practice with these two abilities will change your assassin gameplay significantly, especially disengage. When you get the 180 disengage down and you're able to do that quickly and consistently and get that quick camera snap 180 down, you'll do a lot better. So I don't really have advice with those other than just practice makes perfect. And disengage, fun little tip with disengage I can show you. I don't know if there's anything around here that I can show you with. I might be able to show you here. So the disengage, unlike the Myrmidon leap, so the Myrmidon leap is technically ground locked. So if I was to Myrmidon leap from here to that roof, it would actually put me on the ground because it's locked to the ground. However, let me see if I can find. However, the assassin disengage will allow you to gain vertical height. So I might be able to show you right here. It's actually going to allow me to gain some vertical height. So you see that ledge right there? If I do this right, I should actually gain some vertical height by disengaging. So you see how that ledge is actually a little bit above my character? If I disengage, let's hope I do this right and don't look like an idiot on the camera. I should actually land up on that ledge. I was facing the wrong way. But the theory, the thing is that it actually functions as a real jump. Wow, I really just whiffed that. All right, so here we go for try 2. I actually should land on this ledge above me. There you go. All right, so you see how not only did I gain vertical height, but I also gained distance. So this is going to allow you to do some crazy parkour and get away from people doing things. You're gonna be able to move in ways that other people can't replicate, that non-assassins can't replicate. So unless you're a Fae, right, you might not be able to jump from here to there. So you could actually disengage over there. So that's another fun little tip about disengage, is that you can use it to do creative movement that other players cannot replicate. And for the final powers, the final power here is Bandit's Armor. This is the high elf racial power. This, dude, just turn your brain off. Just use this thing on cooldown. It's a 45-second cooldown, and it lasts 15 seconds. If you're in a fight, it's typically going to get broken through in 15 seconds. One thing I will say about using this power is that if you use Bandit's Armor and Dagger Storm and Backstab, and you have all 3 of those barriers up, you sort of need to pay attention to the order that you did them in, because there is a very good chance that, like, let's say you do the order of Bandit's Armor, then Dagger Spin, then Backstab. You really want to wait to do that next Backstab unless you take a ton of damage, because there's a very high chance you'll actually waste that Backstab barrier. Speaking of wasting barriers, this is the most important tip from this video for the Blackguard, and that is that new barriers do not overwrite old barriers, which means that you need to make sure that your backstab barrier and your Daggerstorm barrier completely expire before applying a new one. So you need to make sure your previous backstab is completely gone. The barrier needs to be completely gone before you backstab again. Same thing goes with Daggerstorm. Those are both independent barrier buffs that do not override each other. So if you've got 50 HP left on your backstab barrier and you backstab again before that 50 HP of that particular barrier is gone, you will waste it. It will just poof, go into dust. So you need to be very disciplined with your barrier reapplication, and you need to sort of keep track in your head how long it's been since you Daggerstormed, how long it's been since you backstabbed, and you really need to Hawkeye your own health bar. I watch my own health bar, like I said previously in the video, I watch my own health bar more than the enemy health bar. I'm constantly looking at my own health bar, and this is what's going to separate the men from the boys, is can you be disciplined on your Daggerstorm and on your backstab to use them as soon as you can, but not too soon. And it's a hard habit to break, man, especially if you come from Cutthroat, where on the Cutthroat, you constantly spam backstab no matter what. Here, if you spam that backstab too early, you'll fuck yourself. If you spam it too late, you'll fuck yourself. So, this separates the men from the boys. This is the Spec. So, best of luck, Godspeed, and that's the hardest part about the entire Spec. Alright, now the fun begins. Here we are into the combat section of the video. I know there's a duelist here because I've been exposed, and I'm fairly confident in this matchup, so I'm going to let him get the opener. I'm going to try to instantly blink step to him to knock him down mid go for broke. Unfortunately, I'm a little too slow at acquiring him, so he does get the full channel off and I don't get the knockdown. But as soon as I catch up to this guy, going to hit him with a Daggerstorm, get that barrier up, immediately kidney shot. As soon as he retaliates that kidney shot, I'm going to immediately blind him as soon as the CC immunity is faded away. And I'm keeping my Daggerstorm barrier and backstab barrier up. He's going to dodge roll away. I'm going to 180 disengage and then flip to him again. And fun fact about this fight, since I was very vigilant in keeping my barriers up there, I ended the fight with more health than I started with. If you go back and watch the video, I actually gained health fighting that guy. After his go for broke was done, my health only went up from the Tub Thumper and Wildkin's Retort and keeping those barriers up. That's kind of how the synergy work. Now, they all don't go that cleanly, but that kind of gives you an example of the strengths of this class, and I think that clip really showed off what the Blackguard is capable of. This next clip is going to show off the pure brawl potential of the Blackguard Assassin, and this is against a Brigand Ranger pre-Corrupted Soul nerf, and I'm going to stand in his Corrupted Soul and face tank everything. So here I go. You're going to see a strategy I like to call tempo ulting. So I'm just going to ult here for the blind and to cleanse the debuffs. So I believe right here I'm just going to ult just to cleanse debuffs and to get that immunity and immediately re-engage. That's a pretty good strategy, especially against, when it's a outright fist fight like this is right here. And you're noticing, if you're looking at the health bars, you're like, wow, you're kind of losing. Here's the thing. He's chaining his ultimates. Once his ultimates go away and once those are on cooldown, you're going to see this fight change pace here. There's another tempo ult for the blind. Do that for the blind. Do that to cleanse the debuffs. There's another stake there. But as you can see, like once he uses those two ultimates and doesn't have that lifesteal anymore, you can see that he was winning that fight, and now he's slowly started to lose it, and now he's rapidly beginning to lose it. And that kind of shows you the brawl potential of the Blackguard Assassin. And keep in mind, that matchup is considerably easier now that Corrupted Soul has been nerfed. But I just wanted to show that clip as a pure example of what the Spec is capable of if you're able to stay disciplined on those barriers. This next fight is against a Confessor, and it's going to include some examples of things not to do. I believe I missed both a kidney shot and a dirty tricks this fight, as well as I spam my Daggerstorm ability way too many times. Like I'll hit it like 2 or 3 times instead of just the once. That's just due to poor discipline. I just hit the ability too many times, spammed it too much. So yeah, here's some examples of things not to do. This fight does not go my way. The first half of this fight goes very poorly. Some of that is because fighting a Confessor is very annoying with the way their ultimate is right now. They basically get 3 in a row, and it charges really fast, and the Blackguard does rely on mobility, or does rely on uptime for their survivability. So it sucks. It just sucks, by the time you reach the person, they turn invisible again, It's just a constant state of that. So he's going to get me down to half HP. He's at full HP. He's going to get me down to half, but I'm finally going to touch him. I'm finally going to be able to touch him for a second because he does not have an ultimate. And this is where I'm going to make up some ground, is with this. And this is where the fight will start to turn around, because he's a confessor and he's actually starting to run out of mana. Like, at this point, like, they can only do this for so long before they run out of mana. And there's the whatever 5th ult. And a good strategy against the confessor when they ult like that is to just immediately channel a bandage and just bandage right in their face. There he goes. I'm sure he doesn't have much mana at this point, and he's going to wait for his ult to charge again for the 5th time and try to attempt to get away from me. There's the charge to get away, and he goes for the Q power to blind me, but I am CC immune, and I'm looking for him, like, where'd he go, where'd he go, where'd he go, and I'm going to see him, and look at this mobility. Double dodge, 180 disengage forward, blink step, into the kidney shot, and man, what a highlight reel finish. That looks so cool. And that's one of the cool things about the Assassin, is that when you pull off that mobility combo, you can do some really flashy plays with the Assassin. It's very satisfying. It's probably my favorite thing about the class, is how, you can do some, like, big brain stuff, and it just feels really solid when you do that, like, very assassin-y type gameplay like that. Here we go into the final fight. I'm getting ready to pull a Thrall here. Unfortunately, a Slayer Duelist opens up on me as soon as I get aggro on that mob. Luckily, I'm able to find the Slayer pretty quickly, hit him with a stun, and then immediately out of that stun, hit him with a blind. And then out of that blind, I'm going to actually tempo vanish blind again. So I use my ultimate just for that blind and just to knock the dots off and get immunity. So now I'm able to disengage, and that duelist is not only out of stamina, but also out of mobility. So they can't retaliate, can't get away from me, and despite our health being even, this fight is going to go very downhill for this duelist very quickly, due to the fact that they've got no stamina or dodges or ways to get away. So take out the duelist pretty quick. Then that duelist confessor buddy, K-Cool, comes over the hill, and I've got a Thrall and this confessor on me. The confessor uses their mobility to get away from me, so I just go, screw it, and go the other direction. That's a completely valid strategy. If a ranged character uses their mobility to get away from you, just go the other way. And I pop my Q power there to vanish. So now that Thrall that was shooting me is now shooting that confessor. So I've got a Thrall teammate now. I'm able to bandage behind that tree, and I'm going to immediately open up on the confessor. And yeah, so the tables have turned now that I have a Thrall teammate on my side helping me. Hit him with a blind right there. There's the confessor ultimate, which is super annoying. Gonna immediately blink step to that as soon as I can. And here comes the Nathari dash, which I believe, yeah, I miscalculate that blink step there. I mainly did that blink step for the immunity, but hit him with the 180 disengage into the kidney shot, and that's the 1v2. And to add insult to injury, I actually cut this person's head off, loot them, and then I go to run back to the other body to loot the other body. And I guess since they had a close spawn, the duelist was able to come back in time to get these hands one more time. And this fight, yeah, so he catches me off guard there. I was not expecting them to come back that quickly. But yeah, at this point, I mean, that's a much easier fight for me, because I don't believe he had an ultimate charge. He did catch me off guard, but I don't believe he's got an ultimate here, because he just ran back from the spawn, or from the graveyard. So hit him with the blind, kidney shot. I believe I actually knocked him out of stealth there with that dagger spin. So yeah, that one went pretty easy for me. So anyway, hope you guys found this guide video useful. The main staple of the Blackguard is barrier discipline. You've got to get used to using that backstab and dagger spin barrier. Not too soon, not too late. There definitely is some timing to it, and some awareness that comes with the spec. So that's the hardest part. But hopefully this video was able to sort of show you what it's all about, and see if you maybe want to check it out, play something weird, play something different. I personally am having a good time. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one.